Hello.
Hello,
Yeah, good morning.
good afternoon.
Uh, yeah, good afternoon.
Yeah, how are
Okay,
you?
so I'm fine, thank you. And what about you?
I'm all right.
That's great to hear. All right, so welcome to Into the Uncharted podcast. Today it's your boy Junior with Emmanuel Ganda. Emmanuel Ganda is in the United Kingdom. He's schooled in the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, where he studied land economy. And after completing land economy, he did his uh, national service as a teaching and research assistant at the same department. And then he's now in the United Kingdom, as I mentioned, and he's just completed his Master of Science in Real Estate Finance. So today we are having him on this podcast where we'll be trying to understand. Uh, we are delving into the topic working and schooling in abroad. And most because of where he's been, that is the United Kingdom, most of the conversation will be focusing on that. And we plan to have him a lot more on this podcast where he's going to share a lot of his experiences with him because he's going to help us delve deeper into a lot of the conversations that we'll be having going forward. And then with regards to these conversations, it will not be held with him only. We plan on having someone also in Germany, someone in the United States, and other people from different countries to also solicit their opinions because I do believe that conversations like this we need to take into consideration some of the nuances that exist because of the country, the specific country that you are in. So once again, I would like to welcome you for honoring this invitation and thank you for your presence.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, that's great. All right, so without much ado, I believe we can start. And then my first question to you would be, what do you think are some of the major motivating factors that pushed you to decide to apply and also school outside Ghana?
For one it was about career progression. Like, looking for the school that taking in Ghana. Um, Everything like that is where you see your whole life. Um, at some point in time, you just want the opportunity that kind of like exposes you to different cultures, different opportunities, and I mean having an international certification course, we kind of like uh, exposes you to different international organizations, different opportunities. And for me, that was one motivating factor that pushed me. It was also about having the ability to kind of like further my knowledge in the chosen field that I took. So applying for school, my focus was just to still be in real estate, but kind of like have kind of like connect the dots on how real estate is an investment and how people finance it and all that. So that was also one of the reasons why I chose my program.
Okay, that is very insightful. That's very true. I do believe that usually these are some of the reasons why a lot of people do, travel. And I do believe with regards to that, I for once, I can also say these were some of the major reasons why that made me decide to pursue, you know, uh, or to apply for this particular opportunity. Because after
Yeah,
our national service, I also, schooled in the University of Cambridge, did development studies, MPhil. Now, one would say sometimes you get a question, there is a course like that in the University of Ghana. Why didn't you apply for it, right? But I mean, if you want to get opportunities outside, if you want to, broaden your opportunities, it is also a very you cannot just, school in one place. Like you
yeah,
said, the culture, even meeting new people, interacting with,
like
it makes
exactly.
you a global citizen. So that is something that you would like to, that is
Yeah,
something you want to have on your resume or your CV. So yeah, I do, understand you with the reasons that you've provided.
yeah.
Now, let's go deeper into the reason why we are having this conversation. That is working and schooling in abroad. Now, the first question that I would ask you is if you can, or the first thing I would want to know is, could you share some experiences so far, your personal journey so far, with regards to um, studying outside, whilst you are studying and also working? I would like to know how your personal journey has been so far.
Yeah, being in the UK, that is first time being away from States. I really say it was a moment of downtime. Some at some point I found it exciting. At some point, I mean, feel like kind of question of why did you do it? Along the line, there were a couple of challenges starting my program. So I came in. There were a couple of challenges which I was having to adapt to the system alone, and then having to work and support myself for two other challenges. Being an international student, that didn't have full funding that you didn't have um, support for your mentor. That means you have to work to some that aspect of your life. Uh, of course, there are always opportunities to do part time, but without some level of time and some level of organizational skills. Uh, you think the really hours and get small, but mind you, that is time you are taking off. That is, some sort of kind of like limiting you for a certain degree. Um, Personally, when I got into it, that was the very first time I was sitting and working. I had to put the whole mechanism of like doing this thing together. So in my very first um, weeks, I didn't get a job. So it was just English community kind of adapting to the culture. Um, the main challenge at that point was just being homesick. You miss your family, you miss your friends back home, thinking about it, kind of like them. But fortunately, we have taken the opportunity to connect with them and all that. Eventually, I had a job, and there are always opportunities. Like I'm on campus, so there are always opportunities at the campus job portal that you can apply for campus. So you can get jobs maybe to the campus jobs and all that. But fortunately for me, I had a network of learning that had come from. I had then a couple of times before when I my focus was just working along what I feel like they have had the experience, they knew their way around. I connected more with them. They helped me get my time getting. So from the beginning, it was quite difficult. So the job required us to strong hours, about 10 12 hours at a time. And, it was difficult and also benefited me. So if I'm doing just 20 hours, then I was got to work just 2 days, which meant I had ample time to focus on my studies, like to do other stuff. The challenge here is that it kind of like makes the days we are working kind of like so good because I'm able to do one of that time. But the other days that we have, it's requires you kind of like really manage your time for really investing, really kind of like push to get things done before the next year, right? Um, Having to work and speak if it is your first time, it's not easy. Like I mentioned, time management, time management. So you especially have to work on company jobs or shifts that are shorter. That will require greater amount of time and plan. For example, if you are working 5 hours per shift, that means you have to do 4 shifts to stay your busy hours. And mind you, you need the money, especially if you don't have money. And so, in a situation like that, you imagine that you have to work 4 days and probably have to be in class 3 or 4 days. Now, how do you balance it?
Of
How
course.
to balance it? That requires a lot of time, time. Um, I was thinking I had longer hours. So that's like three, 3 days of my week for work, weekend, and then the other
Mm.
day. And, um, it has taught me in it. It has taught me. There were some kind of personal growth that comes with it. Because I was now taking responsibility of certain things I wasn't responsible for back home. Because it was more like I was a full-time student back home. Everything, mom and dad, family, they supported. But yeah, there were things that I had to take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just see because of studies. You need work. Then if you are not working, the question is how do you pay your bills? The question is how do you feed when you are
Yeah.
not on a full scholarship? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, experience wise,
Mm-hmm.
I've developed myself in terms of like prioritize what is important at each point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of challenge, I would say
Mm-hmm.
it was very much stressful. Stressful because sometimes you have assignments, you have deadlines and all that, but you're also looking at what will happen if I don't work this week. That
Yeah.
means my income for the month is going to be
Be affected.
lower than yes. And so all the time you are thinking of like balancing these two, work
Yeah.
and
So you
study.
are thinking of the money, and you're also thinking about meeting your academic objectives. Because mind you, I believe first of all, you are there because you want to study, and then
Exactly.
use the opportunity to get better opportunities for yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you are always constantly facing the real challenge of having to balance your major reason for being there and also what is going to also help you in the short term to be able to achieve those long-term objectives.
Exactly. Exactly. And so working, I mean, you had to do it just because of the finance. Even if
Mhm.
you didn't want to, but you had to work.
Yeah.
And by the grace of God, we turn out fine.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally you and you mentioned it. You earlier mentioned that it was your first time doing working while schooling,
Yeah.
and to chip in, I do believe that one thing for a lot of people who travel to school,
Yeah.
it's usually the case because unless maybe you've been in some of these high income countries where
Yeah.
things are a little bit different, where they are able to school and also work in, say, McDonald's or work in other areas,
Yeah.
as part or something like that. And even in the UK, if you're the United Kingdom itself and you are schooling, you are only allowed 20 hours too. So it does not really
Exactly.
apply to international students, apply to natives as well. So
Right.
yes, but with they do it from the very onset. But usually from people coming from Africa, people coming from India, when you're speaking to them, you do realize that yeah, it is the first time that they are doing something like that.
Mm.
And you also did mention the issue of funding, right? Which is a very important concept here. That is also one thing that has to be considered in this conversation. People with
Yeah.
full funding, that is, I mean, a full tuition and then maintenance.
Yeah.
Here I mean stipends, where some people call it stipends.
Yeah.
Their experiences will differ a lot from you because, like you said, with your situation, it was a different kind of funding where
Yeah.
it was full tuition. So you have to, work to sustain yourself for the month.
Yeah.
So it wasn't more of, okay, I have to, I can do it or I want to do it. It was a need for you, right? Because if you don't do
Yeah.
it, you're not getting any monthly stipends, so you're not getting any quarterly money,
Yeah.
to support you. Now, so I do understand because I've also interacted with other people who've had, full funding, and then their experiences are a little bit different because they can choose
Yeah.
not to work depending on how much more money maybe you may want
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So
So
I do.
with that I remember my very first term. So it
Mm-hmm,
began in September and ended in December. So I had a couple of assignments to do, and
mm-hmm,
most of them were supposed to be submitted in December. Now
mm-hmm,
I'm an international student in the UK.
mm-hmm,
I remember what I came with. back home because of exchange rate. It wasn't that much. And so
Mm-hmm.
in my first month or two, let's say a month and a week, I wasn't working because I was still working on my CV to get a job and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
literally, the income that I had brought back, I had brought from Ghana. That was what I was dependent on. And so
Mm-hmm.
in late October, November, the money I had on me was finishing. And so there was a need to work to supplement that, right?
Exactly.
Now, like I mentioned earlier, I had missed some weeks because I came in, and so there were some essential information that I
You
missed,
needed
and so
to
yes,
get your
so it was more like you trying to get to understand a lot of things around your school, the program, and all that, and
yeah, so
then
you catch up
at,
from the very
at a
beginning.
point, yes, at a point you start having this headache of finance, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start having headache of have having to meet deadlines in terms of your assignment and all that. And mind
Mm-hmm.
you, many the misconception we have is that once you study back home and then let's say you excel so well, you
Mm-hmm.
think that it's just going to automatically translate here. The
Yes.
system the system is different. So
Yeah.
one major challenge for me was essay writing. So here
Mm-hmm.
they expect you to write it in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
critically assess the situation, like discuss it in a way and all that. And so that was something that you were now beginning to learn, adapt to, and all that. And so
Mm-hmm.
I had deadlines, I had need for money, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, I got my job somewhere middle October, late October. My deadlines were approaching and all that. So at some point, it was always a tough call. It
Mm-hmm.
was always a tough call. Now, either to work on the assignments on projects that you have, or to steal a day or two off and be at work. Do you get it? So
I get you.
yes, at some point, it's always about you just prioritizing. Like you sit back, you think what what is really important at this point in time. So
Mm-hmm.
um per my contract with the part-time job I had, I was supposed to do 2 days in a week,
Mm-hmm.
right? And luckily for me, it was an agency. So there were times that I could tell them that I didn't want to work, but I had to work at least one shift a week.
Mm-hmm.
You
To
get it?
maintain your
So
system.
yes. So at some point, getting to a deadline, you just have to kind of like, I mean, forget about the money if you really want to excel in the program you are in, because mind you, it can be so daunting at a point because time. I mean, you have to really try to submit, not to be late and all that. So there were times
Yeah.
I have to cancel my shift, and then those were periods that I learned the value of money,
Mm-hmm.
like the true value of money. I mean, they've fully spoken to us about time value of money, but this time around, I really
Mm-hmm.
had to really to manage the little that was in my hand, and so
Yeah, it helps you to understand opportunity cost too as well because you
exactly,
have to
exactly,
quantify in real terms, see
yeah,
what you were being introduced to when you were in high school and also at the university. Now it's very important that you brought up the issue of the differences in the examination structure and
yeah,
also the whole academic system, both in your home country and that of your host country. Then
yeah,
it is very important conversation, and I know if we decide to go into this right now, because I have a lot of experiences to share myself, and I also
yeah,
know you want to share.
a lot,
So
a
if
lot,
we decide to go into it now, I think we may probably not be able to, fit it all in this
yeah,
time.
yeah,
There is a
yeah,
conversation that I really like, and there is a conversation that will bring you back again to, have, because it is a very, very important conversation. Because
yeah,
one important thing is that education has now become a major channel through which people are migrating, right? But
yeah,
also, if you are migrating because of education, most host countries have got laws in place where they expect you to perform well before you can base on that to stay. Like the UK, for instance, if you don't complete your course, you cannot get your postgraduate
graduate, yes,
visa.
sir, yeah,
So to be able to do that, you need to be able to also do well in your assessment, right? And in doing
yeah,
so, it's not exactly the same as that of Ghana. And you would think, oh, it is essay right, and I can probably stay home. I don't have to, learn and do whatever. It's gonna
mm,
be. me, but trust you, that is like one of the most difficult form of assessment because now, mind you, they know that you have access to every search engine in the world. You have access to all the academic papers and all that. So when you are doing something, they
The resource
expect
is vast.
exactly.
The
So
universities have invested in it, and so they expect some level of commitment
yes,
from you. So yeah,
yeah, and structures that they expect. So this is a conversation that will be held later on because
yeah,
we have a whole lot of things to look at, and we'll look at that in detail later on.
yeah,
Previously, in your statement, you did mention the issue of social network, which is very
yeah,
important because I do believe that um, assimilating into the culture in Cambridge was a little bit difficult for me personally because
yeah,
you've you've never been outside your home country before, and the first time that you are doing so, it's not for entertainment or something. This is
yeah,
for education, and so you get there something. I'm sure maybe you might have felt it too at some point because you feel
yeah,
you really ask yourself, is this where I belong? Do I really belong here and all that?
yeah.
In familiar
Many
faces,
times.
and I wasn't getting there. That what do you call it? That opportunity to see familiar faces. So
Yeah,
I do really understand the bit where you mentioned that seeing familiar faces helped you to integrate and also know where to
yeah,
look for and all
yeah,
that. So that is why this whole podcast too is meant to do. It's not everyone that will get the opportunity to meet people that are from Ghana or that are
yeah,
from home countries. So listening to these experiences, they do realize that okay, people have been in this position before, so this is not a new thing. And what were the steps that they took? How did they, get through it and all that? And that is
yeah,
why, yeah, to share our experiences to,
yeah.
bring forth.
Um, in terms of culture, especially, getting in at the very beginning, there was something like a cultural shock.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for the peculiar one was the fact that I saw a lot of women smoking. I didn't understand. I mean, I know people smoke, but
Uh-huh.
I didn't imagine that. I mean, it became a lifestyle. You know what I mean? And so, to deal with things like that, at some point, I mean, from the very beginning, I tried to hang out more with people that I could relate with more, just to kind of like
Get into the system.
feel, yeah, feel like I'm not alone. You get it? Because
Mm-hmm.
you can be in class and then they need a break to just go out and smoke, and that was something that was really shocking to me. You get it?
Mm-hmm.
The,
Mm-hmm.
so the Ghanaian family I met here, I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
really kind of like provided that sort of emotional support. They give me the level headedness, because sometimes you go out, you see things that you don't really understand, but when you come home, you you get to see what you are used to, what you are accustomed to. So that kind of
Mm-hmm.
like gave me time to assimilate or get myself familiar with what is most of these things that they do.
Okay. Talking about culture, I think one of my culture shocks was, I think this was purely academic. When you go to class after a 2 hour class, after 15 minutes, they give a 10 minutes coffee break. And I was like, wow, this is, different. This is not how I'm used to because back home in Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, class can start at say 6 and then we'll go until 9, or if you have 6 to 8, then you go 8 to 10. Nobody will give you any break. The only break that
Oh,
you
great.
get will probably be small window where you walk to the next class or something like
Yeah,
that. And
yeah,
that's not as much as 5 minutes or something like that, and class begins. So that was quite different. And so talking also about culture, how is the workplace culture like? Because I know after we completed what do you call it, Common University of Science, we
yeah,
did our national service where we worked in Ghana, and
yeah,
even before doing long parts, I'm sure there were some internships that were done along the way and all that.
yeah,
And so you have some bit of experience in the workplace in Ghana, and
yeah.
also now you've had experience in workplace outside Ghana. Now, do you see any differences? Are there certain things that particularly stood out to you where you think, okay, sharing these with people who are now also probably going to make their journey would be able to know, oh, okay, this is something that this guy mentioned that he experienced back then. So when he sees it, it will be something not so shocking to them or something like that. Is there something like that that you may have come across whilst working and all that?
Generally, workplace culture. I would I would only say this: the British people, they can be really nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can be really nice. They always want to offer you assistance. They always want to give you the help that you need to really accomplish your task. But then, what they expect from you is full commitment.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to do what you are expected to do within the hours that you are at work. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you are unable to do it and you need assistance, you just have to ask. Yeah. So, being in the UK, I've had the opportunity to work a little in the corporate setting and then also some casual jobs. So in the
Mm-hmm.
corporate setting, which was more of internship, what
Mm-hmm.
was expected of me was like a weekly activity. So they gave me this to work on within the week, and so you had to deliver that within the time frame that was given to you.
Mm-hmm.
But what I realized was that there was so much assistance. There was so much assistance because at every point in time, you have your colleagues, you
Mm-hmm.
have people that are ahead of you asking you if you need help. Yeah, so that support is there. That support is there.
Yeah.
Working in casual roles, which I found myself in the healthcare setting. So that came with a lot of I had to work under strict regulations because healthcare, the laws and all that have to do with. So
Yeah. You don't have to breach any rule
yes,
because
yes.
life
So,
is true.
so that one was being fixated within a certain.
More standardized.
Yes. So with that one, there was no much flexibility
Mm-hmm.
because at your shift, you know that you are supposed to work to the betterment of someone, and
Mm-hmm.
so there are things that are expected of you. You have
Mm-hmm.
no room for like
To
error.
make a mistake or something like that, or for any records or something like that.
Yes, there was no room for that, and so before your shift, if there was any need for clarification, you better do it for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once you start, it is about you um, having the person you are looking after at heart. And so there was no room for error. And
Mm-hmm.
so this, like the at some point, I mean, in other settings, we've realized that there's some sort of flexibility where you have to interact with your superiors and all that to get the work done. But in a
Mm-hmm.
different setting, which is the healthcare, you have to work under strict guidelines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that required a flexible mindset, the ability to adapt to different settings, different requirements, and all that. Yeah,
Okay.
and
Okay.
that is a bit more different from back home. So I've done internship back home. My
Mm-hmm.
experience of that was that if you don't have questions to ask, I mean, if you don't make
And,
the effort to interact with whoever that you are interning with, they don't mind you. You can sit there the whole day,
yeah.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
here, from the get go, they give you
The
something to work on,
mm-hmm.
and then they follow up to make sure that you are really learning something. You are getting the help that is expected of you to complete your tasks. So
Mm-hmm.
back home and here, I would say with these people, working under them, I realized that they made time to help
Mm-hmm.
you grow as a person, to help you get something out of the little time that you have with them, unlike back home.
Okay. So
You know what I mean?
you believe the culture is more inclusive where you are now compared to.
Exactly, exactly. Um, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you especially as an intern, there are
Mm-hmm.
some things that I mean you don't feel comfortable doing because you feel like you're an intern, right? But like just because of how they welcome you, because of how they interact with you, because of how they the kind of assistance they are willing to give you, it
The,
makes you
the environment that they create.
it makes you very calm. It makes you very eager to also contribute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unlike
Mm-hmm.
back home, I
But
didn't have that experience back home. You get
okay,
it? Yeah, so they can,
I totally understand you
yeah,
because I've also worked here and also worked back home in Ghana, and I do, identify with some of the things that you've mentioned,
Yeah,
where especially the inclusive bit, where they are always engaging you, to know how things are going with you, how best they can help you, HR reaching
yeah,
out to you whenever, they feel like they could be of help, making it known to you that they are always available, thinking about, currently where I am in, they are always, thinking through, your career progression with you.
yeah,
They will ask you, well, is there any way they could be of help? Is there anything that you are looking out for? Is there any particular, qualification that you have that you think it's befitting for a certain role that will be opening
yeah,
up any, it is very inclusive, right?
yeah,
And I'm sure not everybody may have had that experience, and that is something that I'm looking for in the near future, interact with people who know some of the experiences that they've had, and also, bring them onto this podcast where we will discuss it and get to know, because I know it's not going to be all, green everywhere. There will be
yeah,
some and if, even back home working, there are also a lot of positives, right? There are a lot of
yeah,
good things that you can say that also outweighs, some of the positives here. So these are all some of the conversations that we'll be getting into. So it's not always that it is super positive. Other times too, they
yeah.
are not positive, right? And one thing I know for certainty is that they don't play with their time, right? They give
No,
you
no.
a lot of rules. One advice that I would give is that if anyone, if you are working outside your home country, in Ghana, we don't prioritize a lot of contracts, right? But in the UK, I've been in the UK now, I'm also currently in the United States, no matter the job that you are doing, you will get a contract. You get a
Yeah,
contract, and that will spell out the expectations of you. That will spell out, if you decide not to come to work, if you decide to come to work late, and then or if you are running late, what you are supposed to do and all that.
yeah,
You've got to take those very important, because in Ghana, sometimes jobs start at 8, people show up at 8:30, and then they don't get any, repercussions for that. Or
yeah,
even where I am working currently, you cannot clock in at a certain time, because if you clock in, let's say 30 minutes before time, and then you are not doing anything, they would have to pay you for that. But at the end of
yeah.
the day, right? So there are some of these things. You look at your contract documents, and then you really understand the rules and regulations that they have for you. But if you follow the rules, it is, some of these places are some of the nicest areas to work. Of course, it also depends on the company that you are working with, and the
Exactly.
working in and all that. Because I've seen a lot of, conversation on social media where some people are also working in different, companies, different sectors, and then they complain about, work life balance and all that. They're not getting
Yeah.
enough to, go about their activities as well and all that. So that is something that we will always, be looking out
Yeah.
for.
That is very true. Talking about the time
Mm-hmm.
here. If you are expected to be at work at 8, then it is required of you to get there 5 minutes earlier. There's
Mm-hmm.
no room to be late, unlike back home. There's no room to be late. Once you are late, the very first time, then it is they can understand. But
Mm-hmm.
when it becomes consistent, then
Mm-hmm.
that is an issue of commitment to them, and
Mm-hmm.
so they'll start to question you. And I mean, you don't want that,
Yeah,
right?
that's important, because I think initially too, you did mention the issue of organization, and time
Yeah,
management is a very
yeah,
important part of organization, particularly
yeah,
here, with our conversation centering on, schooling and then working, right?
yeah,
If you have assignments and then you also have work coming up, you have impending job appointments, you also have assignment that is also drawing near to submission deadline,
yeah.
so sometimes I'm sure you may have to get off work, and then you have a brief window to be able to submit your document, your
Exactly,
assignment. And so
exactly.
these are all some things that it will help people to think through, if you're about to make such a decision, right? Now, another important question that I have is that, from your own experiences, do you
Yeah.
think, working and schooling sort of affected your grades, or you think it didn't really impact it because you had it all under control, and it is something that can be done without it impacting your grades.
I wouldn't want to blame the fact that you say because I worked that kind of like affected my grades, but it is a variable that I can't
Needs to
take out
be
at all. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned, working kind of like stresses your mind. And so when you return from work, you need some time to rest. So that is like over, for example, I worked 10 to 12 hours a day. So if I should go for that shift, then I can. That means I need to rest for 6, 7 hours. So within that whole time period, I'm unable to do anything related to academic work, right? And on a master's level, what you have to understand is that they expect that you should know some basics. And here was the case. I was doing a degree in real estate finance. So it was a blend of economics, finance, and then real estate stuff. I had control of the real estate stuff, but when it came to the finance and the economics, there were some things that
you do it yourself.
I had to do myself because they assume you have knowledge in. Yes, and that required that I study extra, right? And here was the case. I had to work as well. You get it?
Yeah.
So, in a way, I'll say yes. I'll say yes. Work definitely affected the grades I came out with. I believe without it, probably with more time, with more commitment towards academics, my grades would have been a little better.
But before this, though, I know you graduated with impeccable grades, but this is him being a perfectionist, right? Because he's trying to, I'm thinking it's just that, is he in the United Kingdom, for instance, right? I know some schools, their grades, there are ranges, right? So if you get someone graduated with 70, you need to first of all don't compare that with that of the United States, because the grading system is completely different. So if you get someone graded with 70, you need to know the grade that they graduated from, right? Or let's say what the class system is, right? I know you did very well, and your grade, I don't know if he says that it would have been a little bit better. I'm thinking what better he is probably looking for, because I know how the United Kingdom system works. And if better, then I'm thinking, is it possible to even go beyond that? Because I do agree with you. It's a variable.
I mentioned that the fact that you have control of your academics back home doesn't mean it's the same yet. So here was the case that from basic school, I was always among maybe the top 3 in my class and all that.
Oh, okay, so I get you now.
Yes, you get it. From basic school, I was always among the top 3, top 5 in my class. And so I came with very high expectations. Right?
Okay.
I came with very high expectations. Not necessarily to top my class, but to be at that level that I've always been, right?
Okay.
And that was the case that there was something that was taking a bit of time from me.
Of course, that is true. And one of these important things is that we've not considered the issue of your preparation to the work, to and fro the workplace, the travel distances. So you working say 24 hours in a week, but in actual fact, you may be probably spending 30 of your 168 hours.
Exactly.
And then you have to, spend about 49 hours of your whatever that is left, to sleep. And then spend about 20 or more hours in the classroom. So if you're thinking about it, you need to also have time for yourself where you'll be doing other things. You need to think about preparation for classes and all that. So it is a very tight window to operate in. So I totally understand, feel kind of.
And mind you, I don't know if you had that experience. For me, the first 6 months was really difficult. I was always homesick, despite the fact that despite the fact that I had Ghanaian friends around. I was always homesick, and
Uh-huh.
so that made me kind of like come to understand the value of family and friendship, right?
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
I there was always the need for me to phone, maybe video call. I mean, you can't take away that, and
Yeah.
that alone within a week, probably 3-4 hours of your time is going into that, because I mean, without it, then you feel some way.
Yeah,
You
you
get
need
what I
to
mean?
maintain some semblance of a social,
Yes,
like
yes,
you need to keep in touch with your social circles, right? I
yeah,
totally understand. And
yeah,
all these things, sometimes you are unable to call certain friends of yours. They think maybe you may have forgotten them and all that. So that is also a very important thing to consider: working and schooling, and how that
yeah,
also impacts your what do you call it? Your ability to maintain close ties with your social circles, because
yeah,
school is taking a lot of your time. Rest is also taking a lot of your time. Working is taking a lot of your time. Going to and fro to the workplace is also taking a huge chunk of your time. So
yeah,
these are all important things that needs to be considered. And like you mentioned, I've been in your situation before, and mine wasn't as worse as yours because I wasn't working while schooling, right?
mm,
But even in Cambridge, you are not the funding that I had. You are not allowed to work, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
if you're going to work, if you apply for any job in Cambridge, they will ask you for uh, your a confirmation of your term dates, right?
yeah,
And you have to go to your department, your college, and then request for that document to show it to them. And then they will not give it to you. So the
yeah,
only form of work that I had was supervisory works with some of the undergraduate
undergrad,
students.
yeah,
Yes. And even that, juggling that with your with the normal academic hours, and then also sleeping, and also making sure that you meet your what do you call it, your deadlines, submission deadlines. It wasn't easy. So
yeah,
thinking about I was always like, Ganda is someone that I admire so much because what
yep,
he does, you and then Derek, I think Loso, who I'm hoping to bring on, very soon for us
yeah,
to, discuss how it is, similar situation, working and schooling in
yeah,
Germany, because he's done it in Germany. I'd like to also, get to know and then share it with the world how it is, because when you are traveling out there, sometimes you are so happy the opportunity have come, and then you are
yeah,
not thinking some of these, challenges, or let me not say challenges, but some of these, small issues that you have to juggle around and all that. Make sure that
yeah,
your experience over there is going to be a very good experience and all that. So, yeah, it is very important, for us to have this conversation and get it in and then put it out there for people to, know
exactly,
how it is very,
exactly,
very.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
So, uh, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and it is a very, very interesting conversation that I like getting into. It is a very nice one.
yeah,
Now, before we bring this discussion an end, to an early end,
yeah,
I would ask you. I know a lot of our listeners and viewers, they tend to they are trying to also make the same journey that we've made.
yeah,
They want to
yeah,
start these turf that we've already charted. So
yeah,
sharing these experiences helps them. But is there a particular advice that you would like to, if like you mentioned, it's a learning process for you
yeah,
because it's your first time, and then you've gone through it, come out, done very well for yourself. Now things are
yeah,
looking, I'm sure you have a better grasp of your working environment now. You have a better
yeah,
grasp of if you are to do it again. I mean, schooling and studying, you will do it much better than you did it back then. Now,
yeah,
so let's say you were talking to your let's say 2 years ago self, where you were about to around this time we're about to travel again. So 2 years ago self, would you what would be the advice that you give? You know.
so it is preparation,
Mm-hmm.
preparation. Mentally, you have to be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, if if especially in a case where you are making some sort of transition into something new in your case, where you move from land economy to development studies, then you have to prepare, get to learn the foundation, the basics of that program before you come in. In my case, if I was to do real estate finance again from Ghana, of course, I'll have to learn a lot of fundamental things in finance before I come in. You see them, you see it in the books, in the media, and then you think like, oh, I understand this. But when you start the program, then you realize that no, this is really more detailed than I thought, right? And mind you, the school or the lecturers do not really understand that you don't have the foundation in it. You've been admitted to come. That means you are qualified. You can do it. And so they expect you to move with the speed that they move with. So preparation, kind of like once you get admission, you are sure that you are going for this program. I mean, try to acquaint yourself with. I mean, there are even some things that you have to get to understand them properly before you start the program, right? In my case, I was fortunate to come and get into a Ghanaian family that really helped me. That may not be the case for you, right? And so when you come in, before you come in, I would always advise that work on your CV, look at the standards that your host country look out for, work on your CV, and if possible, try to make some part-time job applications before you get in. Because when you get in for the very first month or few weeks, you are not going to get a job. And that means you are going to depend on the little that you are bringing in, right?
Yeah, and it also raises the importance of, bringing something in for your first few, weeks, because it's not like you're going to get a job the moment you get into the country.
It doesn't happen like that.
It will take a bit of time because you have to consider the fact that you'll be interviewed, you'll be taken to the workplace, you'll be oriented. Sometimes the orientation you get paid, but it is not like a full-time or it's not your full hours. So you are going to get some small amount of money.
Yeah.
But it will take, generally, it takes a bit of time. So it even raises the importance of, bringing something in to, take care of yourself for a few weeks or possibly months before you get something that will sustain you. But this was another important question that I want to ask. So do you think that the 20 hours, right?
Yeah.
The 20 hours that has been allocated to students to work, do you think it is enough for 20 hours per week? Do you think that 80 hours monthly working opportunity, working hours, do you think it is enough to sustain you, judging from, having to meet expenses like, how do I put it? Expenses like rent, groceries, because I've lived in the United Kingdom and also in the US. And then the US, what I will be honest with you about is that groceries are very expensive. It is something that it was also a culture shock for me because I've lived, when I was in the UK, the thing that I could buy with, let's say, £50, I can't get the same over here. You get it? So, when we zero in the conversation to focus on the United States, I believe when I speak to McAfee in the near future, we will get into that. Speak to Kennedy, we'll get into that. But now, if you look at the expenditure and then you look at the earnings that you generate within that within the month, do you think that it is enough, to see you through?
It depends on the kind of funding you have. In my case, I had full tuition scholarship, and so all I had to worry about was maintenance, right? All I had to worry about was maintenance. And as a student, if you are prudent enough, the 20 hours that you are going to work, if only you get a shift and then you do it, mind you, at that point, you don't really pay taxes and all that. So in the United Kingdom, that can sustain you for your feeding, your rent, and other transportation, right? Other living expenses. But in a case I mean, I had a friend from Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
She was paying her tuition along the line, and so there were times that she would be like, she needed to work extra and all that because she can't just leave it to the parents to kind of like still push money from Nigeria and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the funding you have, right, the 20 hours could be enough or not. Do you get it? In my case, it was just enough for me. Yes,
Okay.
there were weeks I would even do 12 hours, and then because I'll just go for a shift, and then once I feel like I have a lot of academic work, I just tell them that I can't come in for the other shift. Do you get it?
Yeah.
So that was enough for me because I only worried about rent, feeding, transport to work and all that. So in my case, it was enough. But I can't say the same for someone who is probably having to pay a portion of the fees.
Yeah.
And it also depends on the your location, right? So let's take someone who is in London, is doing a job that pays the person, let's say, the same rate I was being paid. I was paid 14.5 an hour. So someone in London doing the same job, being paid the same amount. Now, the person is probably paying more than 700 in rent.
Yeah, that's true.
Mine was 500 or less. So we can't expect
the same,
You get what I mean? So depending on where you are, you would say it is enough or not. But generally, I think it's a well-thought policy because your first reason for being here is school and not to work. So if you overwork, then you don't have time to study. And once you don't have time to study, you have poor grades. And I mean, that is going to affect you in the near future. So to me, that was enough.
Yeah, and of course, it is a very important thing because now if you think about it, the UKVI has done a lot of assessments, right?
Yeah.
For each particular area, location, and how much you would need to sustain yourself in a month. So you see, mostly schools in London, they have a different financial requirements than schools outside London. Schools in Scotland have a different financial requirement because, of course, their standard of living is, lower than the cost of living. Sorry, the cost of living is lower in Scotland than in London, and the cost of living in London is more than in Reading or in Cambridge or in or something like that. So it is very important if you are going to a school, say Westminster, which is in London, or you are going to say University College of London, or you are going to SOAS, or you are going to LSE. It is for you to think about it, to realize that, okay, how much do I need to spend monthly? How much am I going to spend on rent? How much am I going to spend on feeding? And then is it the work that I'm going to do? You look at the rate, the average pay rate, and then you can use that to make assessment. These are all important things to look out for, which will also help you to know what the cost of living is going to be. Because one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to be out there and then go hungry. Because if you are struggling, it makes every aspect of your life very difficult. Academics is not going to be for you. You are going to suffer a lot from homesickness because sometimes, even if it is not so great at home, you know that as for food, you would have got it. As for work, you would have it. So before you travel, some of these, thoughts should be put in place to understand how things are going to be. So it's a very, very important thing to look at. And then if you translate it to areas like Canada or translate it to areas like the United States, Canada, there are so many provinces, and then each province and how living over there is going to be like. So big research is very important. And in the United States, it's even bigger because each state is as big as a country, and then the living in each is completely different from each state. If you look at California, very expensive place to be, but if you look at, say, Ohio, relatively better. If you look at what do you call it, New York, another expensive place to live. If you look at areas like San Francisco, also very difficult, because it's expensive. But there are other states that it makes it a bit, it's not cheap, but it is comparatively better than the others. So I do get you, and I do understand your situation. So these are some of the things that we try to bring out in these conversations, so that anyone who is listening to us, we are not here to necessarily like advise or give you the best approach to do things, but it's like we are sharing our experiences, and then you
Experiences.
from our experiences, and then hopefully you make the best decision for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been, a very nice experience talking to you. Getting to know this. It's almost
Yeah.
1 hour. We've really shared a lot. And so, if you
Yeah.
have anything that you want to share as your parting message to us, if not to, then we can.
Yeah. So, my advice to anyone making a decision to study abroad, just prepare yourself mentally. Um, the journey is always tough from the very beginning, but I mean, by nature, humans, we learn to adapt with time. So
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning, you may find it difficult, but as time goes by, you realize that you are adapting to a lot of the things that you struggled with in the beginning. And at the end of the road or at the end of the tunnel, you look back and then you are proud of yourself. You are happy with some of the decisions you made. Some of them you regret, of course, but it's all about the fact that you turn out refined, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just with a grade, but with the fact that you have developed yourself mentally, you have developed yourself in a certain way that fits the world better than you used to be. So it can be scary, but it is rewarding, right? So
Yeah.
if you are planning to go abroad and study, it's a good opportunity. Just prepare ahead of time, and then you'll be fine.
Okay.
And it was nice to be here to share my experience, get to connect with you, Emmanuel, and it was really nice talking to you.
Okay. It's very nice talking to you as well. And now thinking about it, I'm even thinking of bringing on McAfee, yourself, uh, Derek, Raymond, Kennedy, Spencer, and everyone, like in this conversation one of these days, where all
Yeah,
of us be sharing our, because I do believe that, especially the country differences, even the county differences, like the specific county that you find yourself in and all that, so that we can bring we can bring the whole conversation in full circle, where we consider a lot of the nuances, then for our viewers and listeners to also appreciate, the differences and everything.
yeah,
So yeah, once again for coming. And of course, this is Into the Uncharted podcast. And with me, Junior here, and today we had Emmanuel Ganda, who has been a very nice and he's been a very great guest altogether, and thank you once again for coming.
you are welcome, and thank you for having me.
Okay, all right, so we'll connect later on, and then we
All right,
will. All right,
I look forward to such opportunities. Bye.
bye.